Hi everyone, it's Talia from Zart Art, and today we're going to be creating a Chinese dragon mask. So here is a little bit of an example of what we'll be creating. So a Chinese dragon mask would traditionally be used or worn during Chinese New Year. So this mask would be a symbol of fortune and prosperity, and generally these masks would use colours such as red, gold and blue within the design, as well as decorated with fur or feathers. So this is just a little example of what we'll be creating. Your design can be very different to mine or similar. Whatever you see as a dragon, your own representation, you can do that as well. So to begin this project, it's always good to have a bit of an idea of what you'll be creating. So the design process is always an important step. So I'm just going to simply draw some very, very basic shapes to create my Chinese dragon. So it'll just be shapes on top of shapes to create layers. So you can use a Chinese dragon as a reference, or a traditional dragon from other cultures could also be used as part of your design process. So I'm going to start by drawing out my largest layer, which is just the background of the head, which is where all of my other shapes will be sitting. So I've got kind of a rounded top and then coming down to where the dragon's mouth will sit. So that's the basic shape for my design, and I'm going to add in some more layers, like some layers around the eyes. So you don't have to draw anything out perfectly. This is just a rough design so you know where everything is going to sit. Okay, so now I've finished drawing out my rough design. Doesn't have to be perfect at all, just so you get a bit of an idea of where everything will sit and where the shapes on top of shapes will be going as well. So now that I have my design, I've changed it a little bit from my original dragon that I've made, but what we're going to do is cut out some of these larger shapes using foam. So this is craft foam, flexible, sturdy and quite thick. This will give our work a little bit of a 3D look, especially when we're adding layers on top of layers. So to work on my foam, the first step is to create that back layer. So the first layer that we started drawing, this larger section, and we will be limited to working at about an A3 size. So our mask isn't going to be any bigger than this. So what I will do is draw out my mask just lightly with pencil. You don't have to go too hard, just so you can see where the marking is. Draw that out to cover my A3 size sheet. So I think I'll focus on drawing one piece, just that top layer of my mask, and then on another sheet of foam I will do that mouth part. So just be aware when you're creating your design, you will be limited by the size. So because I want mine to be a little bit bigger, I'm going to cut out this section using my blue, and then I'm going to do another section here using a different color. So just be aware, depending on what size you want to work with, you might need to section off your first layer into two pieces just so it can fit. Another handy tip is, if you want your work to be symmetrical, you can fold your foam in half and then cut out from that half, and then you'll get two symmetrical pieces, which is what I'm going to do. So draw that background layer just coming off the edge, and then we'll cut that out and have two equal sides. Okay, so now on my second sheet, so I've got my head, which is just this section, and now I'm going to do this mouth part. So what I find is helpful is to just line up the section that you've already completed with the section underneath, so you get a good idea of scale or size for your piece, because you don't want it to be too disjointed and not matching up. So if you just hold that together, then you can get a good idea of where you are drawing out. So the next step after this is I will create some more layers for my piece. So I'll start working on that nose piece, maybe another color here for where the eyes are going to sit, and we'll just build up those layers out of my sheets of foam. So as I'm cutting out my shapes, I'm just cleaning up some of those edges. So just with your scissors, you can trim off anything that looks a little bit uneven. Also, as I'm cutting my shapes and layering them, I'm just putting them together to make sure that everything is to the scale that I am happy with. So just placing your shapes on top of each other to make sure it all sits nicely. So I'm going to continue cutting out my shapes, working with my design and layering, and soon I will start adding some of these nice shiny metallic papers. So using these will just add a little bit more interest to the work and make it a little bit more decorative as well. Okay, so now I'm using some of the metallic paper and layering that for my design. You might notice that I'm not sticking anything down just yet because I want to make sure of my entire composition before I start sticking things down, because if you do want to change something, then it can be quite hard to remove the glue and remove your pieces without doing any damage. So as I'm going, I'm placing my sections where I think I will leave them sitting and just continuing to work until I'm ready to finally glue everything down at once. So now I'm going to add in some of our feathers. So this will probably be the last step for what you are creating, because the feathers can go a little bit all over the place. So just place them where you think you'd like them to fit. You can arrange your colors to coordinate and make it symmetrical, or you can just kind of go free form with it wherever you want your feathers to go. So I'm going to place a few right on the top, just around that eye area. So I think maybe having them just fanning out along the top can look quite nice. So when you're happy with the position of everything, your feathers, your metallic paper and your foam, we can start sticking down everything together. So we're going to be using super tack, so it's nice and thick, so it should stick things pretty quickly, and you'll probably want a pop stick to help spread. So the process here is I'm going to paste down some of these smaller sections which have layers, and then once they're all together, I can start sticking down the bigger sections to each other. So just using a little bit of super tack, you don't need too much at all. Spreading that on the back of your papers and then just pressing it down, and it should hold quite well by itself, and it will start drying pretty quickly. So make sure everything is stuck exactly where you want it to go, because it can be hard to remove these pieces once it has been dried. So now I've got my pieces stuck down, so the super tack works quite quickly, so that's all pretty stable. Now for the last step, we can add some ribbon as part of the decoration if you want to add a little bit more to your mask. So because things are wet, especially the feathers, just gently flip that over, and you might have to reattach some of those feathers just to make sure they stay put. But on the back, anything that is unstuck, just fix that up and press it down. So we're going to leave our piece to dry face down once we've stuck on our ribbon. So on the back, I'm going to attach the ribbon. So I'll show you on the back of my first example. I've just put a line of super tack across the back and pressed the ribbon on, allowed it to dry, and then that has secured the ribbon quite nicely, so that's not going to come off. So I'm going to put my line of super tack where I want my ribbon to sit, and now we don't need it too close to the top because it will be hanging down in longer lengths, and I don't need to do it all the way across the back because I'll leave that middle bit plain because it will hang behind where the mouth is sitting, so you won't see too much of that ribbon anyway. But apply a bit of super tack, cut your length of ribbon however long you want it. Now I'm not going to do a whole lot of ribbon, I'll just do a few little strips just to show you how it sits. So you can do as much ribbon or as little ribbon as you like. You can do one color, you can do two colors, lots of options, and you can do different lengths of ribbon too. But I'm just going to alternate my red and my green, and I'll just do about 2 or 3 strips of ribbon either side, and then that will complete our dragon. Okay, so now I've stuck down my ribbon. What I would do is leave this to dry because that will take about an hour or two for the glue to fully secure. But if you want to see what it looks like, I am going to risk the flip just to show you guys the other side. So you can see we've got our ribbon hanging just from the outside edges. That looks quite nice, but I would leave it flipped the other way for it to dry just because you don't want it to stick on the table, but I will be moving this shortly. But here we have our dragon masks, all good for Chinese New Year if you want to celebrate it, but otherwise it can make quite a nice display, especially as a whole class, where you can explore different shapes and layering as well as using a variety of different materials for decoration. And I hope you enjoyed this video, and I look forward to seeing you next time.